Dan, the Credit Man Willis here, and we're talking about LVNV Funding. This is a third-party debt collector, and what they do, according to their website, is they will buy your debt for really mere pennies on the dollar, and they will outsource the collection of your debt to a company called Resurgent Capital Services, who also has the right to outsource the collection of your debt to, again, other companies. I'm not quite sure why they do this, but I'm sure there's a reason to it, and I'm sure that is to make it a little bit more difficult for you. If you want their contact information, we're going to include a link in the description below to Resurgent Capital Services. According to reports, LVNV Funding is very quick to file a lawsuit against you and take you to court, and their goal is hoping to get a judgment placed on your credit report and placed against you, because this can potentially have your wages garnished. It's really, please be cautious, because the statute of limitations is something to look at. You're not responsible for most of your debts forever. Instead, you're typically only responsible for about 7 years. It depends on what state you live in. And then after that time elapses, your debt's forgiven. Please be careful about dealing with LVNV Funding or Resurgent Capital Services. You really have to be cautious about talking with them to prevent the, quote, re-aging of your account. If your account gets re-aged, then it can stay on your credit for another 7 years, and then another 7 years, and then another 7 years. So please be cautious. The very first step, if you're being contacted by LVNV Funding or Resurgent Capital Services, the very first step is to request debt validation. If instead you're not being contacted by them and they're just on your credit report, you may want to start by disputing that item and that information on your credit report. You might not even have to contact them. But if they're contacting you, or you do ultimately have to contact them, by requesting debt validation, you're saying, hey, LVNV Funding or Resurgent Capital Services, first, prove this account is mine, prove that it is within the statute of limitations, that time window, that I'm still responsible for paying it, and then we can potentially talk about a payment or a settlement. And if you do pay either one of these companies, don't just pay them. If you just pay them and don't do anything, you're just throwing money out the window. It's not going to do anything for you. The best thing you can hope for is that collection item on your credit report being changed to a paid collection, which is minimally better than an unpaid collection. If you do negotiate a settlement payment, you have to, in exchange for your payment, get them to agree that they will stop reporting your account information or remove that bad credit from your credit reports. In other words, the only reason you should pay is if you will benefit by having that negative, derogatory item on your credit reports being removed. And if you're being sued by them, it'd probably be smart to hire a credit repair firm or a credit repair attorney or professional. However, sometimes just showing up in court, their attorneys don't always show up, and I'm not saying anything about LVNV Funding or Resurgent Capital Services, but the debt collection world in general has been fined by the Federal Trade Commission, our government, oodles of times. They get fined every single year. Some company, or more often a number of companies within that industry, for either blatant fraud, for breaking the rules. There's some real strict guidelines on what collection agencies can and cannot say, and there's collection agencies that'll say anything under the sun, but there's some rules about what they can say, when they can contact you, who they can talk to about your debt. Please don't be a victim of these guys. Really, stand up for your rights, protect yourself, and don't just go paying them. That's what keeps them in business, is people that just go and pay them. Avoid that mistake, because if you just go and pay them, you're not going to help yourself. You have to help yourself, especially when you're dealing with people like this who are only concerned with helping themselves. This is Dan Willis. We're going to include a link in the description below to learn some more about Resurgent Capital Services. And then we also have another article about LVNV Funding. Please go check them out. We've also got a free report we're giving away, the 7 Simple Steps to Clean Credit. Have a terrific afternoon, and we'll talk soon.